glad you touched on those topics, right? Because when I reason with the elders all the time, I find it hard to. All right. Sometimes I struggle with if reggae has the possibility of being commercially successful because you're burning out the same system that's supposed to support you financially. So it seems like a contradiction. Like when I have that conversation with people, I'm saying, yo, you're looking on fire on the system and you're looking for this same person to promote that product. And I just see it as a oxymoron to a certain extent.
Absolutely. I've written about that same paradox in relation to Bob Marley in particular, because, you know, Marley is still the number one icon in reggae music. And sometimes I think people are offended when I point out that the reason that we're actually talking about Marley today is because he was able to get his music channeled through Ireland, which then was able to tap into, certainly in America, Warner Communications. So the same corporate umbrella that inevitably leads to social oppression ended up being the same channel through which the vibes of resistance and opposition were coming out. So you're absolutely right. There is a contradiction. There is a paradox, but not everyone wants to confront that. Now, it doesn't mean that it lessens the importance of the music, but it means that we need to understand that there is a kind of ideological and capitalist paradox that surrounds reggae, and to ignore it would be to ignore an important part of it.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing though. Up to this day, everybody is still ignoring that because that's always a sensitive topic where whenever you bring up that topic, everybody wants to stray from it because they feel like as if they come even close to that commercial success, then they feel like they have strayed from the root and they don't want to seem like they strayed from the root because reggae, if you don't have the connection with the people, then it's like you have nothing. But in regards to the whole book itself.
Yeah. And based on your research now, right? I don't think the role of Rastafari gets the credit it deserves in regards to reggae. It's like it's broken up. It's like you have the Rastafari movement and you have reggae, but they don't get the credit they deserve in regards to the whole essence of reggae. Based on your research, right, can you please explain the role of the Rastafari movement in regards to the revolutionary reggae music that the world loves?
Well, you really need a Rasta man to talk about this with true authority. But without the ideological strength and power of Rastafari and its complete opposition to the exploitative systems in society, the music would not have had quite the same strength. It just could not. What I'm saying is that if you look at popular music generally, okay, people will talk about love, they'll talk about their feelings, they'll talk about politics and society. But again, the history of the African people being infused into the Rastafarian experience and the reggae musical expression gives it a different layer of power, strength, and a different association with collective grief, torment, and desire for liberation. These are powerful things. I mean, in popular music, we don't really find those as enduring things. People will say, well, yeah, change is going to come. That's an important message. But we don't look at R&B as being a thoroughly oppositional type of music to Babylon and a whole series of capitalist and racist exploitative practices. Reggae also deals with these other themes of love and society and interaction and so on. But the political dimension is so potent that there may still be questions about whether the mainstream marketplace can handle it. Recently, in an article, I pointed out that the biggest selling reggae album of all time, Bob Marley's Legend compilation, has no songs from the Survival LP from 1979, his most political LP.
Like and soft, tell you the truth, for real, watered down like a One Love vibe. Because is this love waiting in vain? Could you be loved?
Precisely.
Three Little Birds. What else on there?
Yeah, where is Wake Up and Live or Zimbabwe or Survival? Those things aren't there. this is not by accident. And look at the cover. You know, you've got Bob smiling on the cover. Okay, man smiles from time to time. If you look at most of the posthumous Bob Marley covers, you see him in this smiling pose. You never see the man looking, or you rarely see him looking serious. And this too is part of a kind of marketing dilution, a marketing approach calculated to ensure that the music sits in the mainstream. And so I think it's no accident that when we look at Legend, we don't see those songs from Survival that are the most potent in pointing fingers at the system.
Yeah, you know, with reggae being the most revolutionary music in the world, really, you ever realize that the markets that reggae strive in the most, those are colonial markets, like you mentioned, the UK, you have America, and all across Europe. So you feel like that was a directional plot that was intended for reggae to survive in these markets, and in order for reggae to survive in these markets, they purposely had to get rid of the connection with Rastafari and the connection with the whole Black revolutionary movement.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a point there. The Legend example is one, but you know, I've been listening to a lot of Peter Tosh music recently for another article that I'm writing, and you know, Tosh was very uncompromising in terms of the ideological content and confronting the system. And perhaps uncompromising is itself a compromising term to try to encompass what he was doing. But of course, if we contrast Tosh's sales with Marley's sales, we can see that there was a greater reluctance to embrace the message from Tosh. Of course, there were other commercial and interpersonal factors involved, but when it comes down to the message and the musical content, it's very difficult to imagine those audiences, and I mean the mainstream audiences in the same colonial territories, embracing that material in the same way as much of the Marley records in the post-colonial era, because Tosh would cut the occasional love song. We know that. And he will cut the occasional spiritually contemplative song. But most of the time, he is pointing the arrow straight at the system. And you don't get much time to breathe. And if you're on the receiving end of that, and when I say the receiving end, I mean someone who is culturally part of that system and has not previously had a cultural revelation about what that means for Black people or Rastafari or the Black diaspora globally, that's a heck of a thing. That's like a spiritual overdose in one shot. I don't think people were ready for the intensity of that degree of opposition. So yes, there is definitely an issue with reggae and what becomes mainstream and the content of it. We never had in America, certainly, a platinum Peter Tosh album. You know, the records did make some impact, but not in the way that Marley did, because I think there's a sense that while Marley was oppositional, the vibe of his music invited conciliation and unity in a way that Tosh's did not. And I really didn't mean to make a whole series of direct comparisons between the two, because they are very different kinds of reggae artists. But in terms of the commercial realm and this business of the ideological vision and message that you're talking about, I think there is room for a valid comparison.
And I got a question for you right now as a history man, right? So when Bob Marley left the Wailers, right, and became Bob Marley and the Wailers with Naughty Dread album, from my understanding, around that time, I don't know if it's the years or years before, but Max Romeo's War in the Babylon came out.
76, I think.
76, right? All right. Junior Marvin, Police and Thieves, Congos. I think all that. I don't know. I think it was the Heptones had their cultural album at the time, and I spoke to every artist. I spoke to Cedric, spoke to Leroy, spoke to Max Romeo, and all of them say the same story, that they were purposely benched. It's like Island went around grabbing everybody and just put everybody on the side and went forward with Marley. What's your views on that one?
Well, there's no doubt that Island saw the potential in Marley and the Wailers, and definitely went out of their way to promote the band in a big way. And so we can hear that on the Rastaman Vibration album too. And I was thinking about that record this morning. I'd still consider it a great album, but when you compare the sound of the record, and by this I mean the mix and the location of some of the instruments in that mix, it's much smoother, more open, more commercial than, say, Catch a Fire or Burn In, or even Natty Dread for that for those purposes. So I don't think that happened by accident. It's part of the sound of the band, but if you go back and listen to Rastaman Vibration, then go and listen to Burnin'. Something has changed. It's not just the absence of Tosh and Bunny Wailer. There's something in Island's vision for Marley that has also changed. And it comes out in the sound of Rastaman Vibration. At least that's what I'm happy to argue.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you said that too, because I was thinking of even One Love itself, the song One Love directly, not even about any album. But I realized that because most people don't realize that One Love came from the Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions. People get ready. If you realize that song was supposed to be a subtle revolutionary song, the people get ready. And then Bob Marley's One Love was supposed to give a personal insight into that revolutionary perspective. But the way that it was marketed is like they took the whole revolutionary thing from the root, from the Impressions, come to Marley, and then for it to be a cultural, embedment or something like that of what unity is, integrate, let's all integrate, and this is the song that we should all integrate. And what's the perspective on that one too?
I would agree. Certainly, when we recall, for example, the fact that Time magazine had classified the Exodus album as the album of the century, the emphasis always falls on One Love and Three Little Birds. No one talks about Exodus and its historical and cultural implications, at least not in the mainstream media. That's not what we get. Because if that had been the focus, I think the statement made by giving the plaudits to the Exodus album would have been much greater, would have had much greater significance. People are thinking about Marley as a kind of a musical unifier without interweaving the historical narrative of resistance, revolution, and bringing forth the essence of Rastafari as much as it can come through in music. These are important things that get overlooked. So we have to always be aware that there are layers in the music industry in terms of what is distributed, what gets the mainstream spotlight. And I talk about this throughout the encyclopedia. Great albums fail all the time, not because there's anything wrong with the music, but because it's not the message that the gatekeepers necessarily want out there at the time.
All right, Fi, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because one, we speak about how the version of Bob Marley presented to the world is not the revolutionary essence of Bob Marley. Because even Exodus, if I play Guiltiness on the radio show, people ask me what album it's on. But they have the Exodus album in their house. It's like they just listen to a couple songs and skip over certain tunes. But the next thing I want to bring up in regards to clearing up this idea, people correlate commercial success with a good album, right? To your average music listener. And there is no connection, right? And I want to bring up one of my greatest albums here, and the man touching it here, Earth and Stone. We'll bring up this album, Earth and Stone there. The Bridges there, Channel 1, right?
Cool Roots.
Cool Roots.
Right? Anytime we talk about reggae, I have to bring up Cool Roots.
I've got a copy of it right here.
Look at this man right here. All right, then.
I do have a copy of it right here.
All right, there go the right there, right? So to me now, that is you get what I'm saying? That's one of the greatest reggae albums of all time, and it captured the essence, especially with the Channel One sound and the whole revolutionary aspect. Most people don't know about it, right? So an average person will just say, you know, what is that? No one knows, but I just try my best all the time to educate people that commercial success does not represent the quality of an album.
Correct. It's always been this way, but it's important for a larger audience segment to recognize this and to go searching for the music that has the quality that is commercial enough, but did not get the kind of reception, response, distribution, promotion that was needed to make it more successful. And, you know, some of the dubs on this are very, very impressive, highly impressive. It's a very pure roots album. That's what I would say. You know, the word pure is always loaded in terms of culture and popular music. But when I hear this, I think, yes, roots, no question, not diluted commercially and yet commercially appealing. That really is what we should be looking for in the popular music. There's nothing wrong with being commercial. Musicians have to make money. The problem is being commercial with quality in quantity. And we're not getting a lot of that now. At least not enough, which is why we have people like me and you going back to the roots in the 70s. I guess this is a free ad for Precious Sounds and Earth and Stone, but but you know, that album does embody so much of the essence of the sound of the era and the meaning of roots. So I'm glad you mentioned that record.
So a question on that note. Have you ever listened? Do you still listen? Have you ever listened to any modern roots sound that you think embodies what there was within the golden era of reggae?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard bits of things that bands have been doing that sound solid and seem to have a lot of authentic flavor. So I don't want to give the impression that there are no groups who are carrying forward the consciousness of the golden era's sound. I think what is significant is that you have to search really hard to find a lot of those bands. I think there was a time during that golden era where those albums almost seemed to come to you. Now it's a bigger challenge. The music is out there, but you have to find people who are really on the same wavelength and will suggest to you, check out this album, try this one. You know, something that's linked to that kind of roots power. So yes, the music is there, and there are bands all over the world who are still projecting that roots vibe or who are coming up with great dub albums. But the amount of excavation that's required to uncover these releases, I find sometimes challenging.
Man, what he said is really truthful because we're in the mix like Artarchi there. He's an artist there that makes that blood and fire music. But I know Artarchi. You get what I'm saying? Or, you know, we're in that realm where we get access to certain things. But as you said, for a regular person, I don't know how you're going to get exposed to it because it's not being played on radio. You know, so it's like you have to really be into that underground vibe.
Well, let me hear you say mountain, mountain.